This podcast is brought to you by the Northeast BIC, thanks to funding from the Durham Social Boost project provided via DCMS, helping social enterprises grow, supporting local businesses, and driving innovation across our community. Thanks. Hi, my name is Alf McDermott and welcome to the Good Eggs podcast, the podcast that cracks open success stories from people just doing great work across our region. This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Durham Social Boost, so thank you very much to those guys for funding this opportunity for us to speak to our guest today. And we're here at Diego's Joint in Sunnyside in Sunderland, and we're joined by Chris Scadden. So, let's get to it. Well, welcome Chris.
Morning.
Hello. How are you doing on this lovely Friday?
Not too bad. I've never been in this part of Sunderland before, so I'm excited to be here.
Happy days, great. Well, thanks for doing the podcast, Chris. By the way, I really appreciate it. As you know, the Good Eggs podcast was set up to really crack open the top of people's thought processes and get under the skin and find out why people are doing the good work that they're doing. So thanks so much for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So you are Chris Scadden. And your organisation's called Muster, is that right?
It is, yeah.
It's fantastic, great. Before we go into Muster, I just want to find out a little bit about you and what's kind of brought you to where you are today. Would that be all right with you?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you, because where are you from, first of all?
Well, I live in Durham. Yeah. Not originally from Durham. I'd class myself as a smoggy. Teesside, moved there when I was 9. But the story kind of goes a little bit further back than that. Being brought up in a military lifestyle. My dad was in the military, and then sort of had a sort of ropey couple of years. Parents split, which led me to sort of living with my dad. Was a little bit of an alcoholic and sort of struggled with having to come out the military, to be honest. Which was pretty deep, and from a 4, 5, 6-year-old to sort of observe that, which sort of became quite normal. But I seen the real struggle firsthand from someone who felt like they just needed to leave the military. And then, 6-year-old moved in with my mum and my stepdad. Hey ho, and it sort of straight back into the military lifestyle, because my stepdad was in the military, and that was my life for the next couple of years. So
were you travelling around quite a bit? Or?
Yeah, England, Germany. My mum's German.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Speak any or?
No, which is, the next path. Moved to Middlesbrough. My stepdad was originally from Middlesbrough, and he came out the military in the mid-90s, and we sort of moved to a council estate in Middlesbrough, and told it, everybody would be really inquisitive and really interested in who you are and your background and this, that, and the other. And the next thing I know, swastika spray painted on the door,
wow.
Bricks thrown at my mum and spat at, and and it was a really sort of.
When are we looking at? Is this kind of 90s?
This is 94, yeah, and it was just It was a big surprise, and I was I went from being a confident young boy who'd sort of seen himself in loads of different social settings, huge inspirations in my granddad, who was he would talk to absolutely anyone, and then this sort of new world just unraveled on me, and it was it sort of set me back for maybe about 2 to 3. Well, it probably set me back until my early adulthood, really. But
it would. I mean, you're quite, at that age, you're quite vulnerable, aren't you? So of course, it's going to have an effect. Yeah.
But I learned to fight, unfortunately, and it was a really sort of tough situation. Something that I didn't anticipate, but I just didn't want to be that person who stood by and and allow this to sort of happen. And I fought back at times, and it kind of gave me quite a bit of a buzz, to sort of have some justice on people. But, when I fought, the trouble came more. People outside my house with balaclavas and baseball bats, and not that I want to call any police force out, but the local police force, shall we say, never really put it down to anything. we went for racism, xenophobia, and it was just really dismissed, and it had a really, really, really big impact on my life. And
it's just so strange to hear that in 1994, 1995, 96, these things are happening, and it's that's just not good.
It's not. And I just wish that at an earlier age I could have sort of channeled it into a lot of positivity. But
it's difficult, though, isn't it?
But being the sort of I felt segregated from society at times. I still had friends, and I still had I would never class it as a really bad childhood. I still had a really, really good childhood. But it was a tough childhood. As soon as I hit 18, I moved out of home, and I went to the art college in Middlesbrough. Which which had,
so what were you doing there? Were you studying? What were you like? What
I wanted to get into fashion, but I never done art at school. I hated it.
Right.
But which eventually, I seen an exhibition on Embankment at the Saatchi Gallery at the time. I seen some of the YBAs exhibiting, and it just completely flipped my world. I was just like, this is incredible. So I wanted to go into a world of fine art. I lived by myself while I lived with friends, which was a bit dangerous as well, sort of in the early 2000s, because I was welcomed by people with open arms, and at the time, that came with a lot of substance abuse, a lot of drugs, a lot of drinking. I suppose some would call it binge drinking, but at the time.
How old are you at this point?
You're looking at 18 to for the next couple of years, really, into my sort of mid-20s. I was doing this, but there was a lot of disjointment, moving around. I ended up in Weymouth of all places on the Dorset coast. I eventually then went to Bournemouth Arts Institute to go and study a level 3 in fine art. And education didn't necessarily suit me. It was always a little bit of a push and pull. And then years are sort of passing by, and I'm lost, really, just because I at no point do I find where I'm meant to fit in. Okay. And it was I can attribute it now, looking back, being a nearly 40-year-old man, and looking back and going, there are elements of my childhood, there are elements of moving here, there, and everywhere. There are elements of a huge amount of things that sort of just play a part in me becoming a young man, really.
Of course, it all makes up the jigsaw of you and who you are today, and that's probably inspired some of the things which we'll go on to talk about. But
absolutely,
some of the reasons why you're looking to do what you're doing. It's
exactly where you're going with that. Yeah, it's taken me this amount of time and nearly 40 years of struggle to find a place. I did find a place at a point, and that was in the military. It gave me form. It gave me
So you, and I don't know too much about the subject really, but was that in the later years going in the military?
It was, I'd got married. I'd had kids at this point, and I was I volunteered a little bit with people with substance misuse and alcohol abuse. At this point, I'd abstained from anything. I didn't drink. I was off alcohol for a number of years, and I could never. I was looking for that experience to give back.
Find your place.
I worked as a carer, setting up art events and so forth. I also worked at B&Q and Asda, just to sort of find regular money and the disjointed life that I'd had, just to sort of fit in somewhere, really. And then, one day,
you're in the careers office, and the next thing you're wearing a green uniform and painting your face, yeah?
Exactly, which, for some is, for my background, I suppose that a lot of people always at the influence from your dad and your stepdad, and absolutely not. It was a sense of belonging that I was seeking.
So how old were you when you joined the army?
I was 30.
Wow, that is very late compared to most, isn't it?
Yeah, granddad to a lot of people.
That must have been difficult though, going from relatively unstructured kind of life in general, moving around and, going from job to job to all of a sudden, right, you have to be here, here, here. How was that transition for you?
Do you know what? I needed the structure.
Yeah,
I needed the structure because I'd had no structure for so many years. Right. My family give me so much in the way that, it give me real belonging in a fulfilling way. It was just, I was missing that work balance. I needed something that sort of, it wasn't a work-life balance, it was a work balance. I needed something that sort of give me an element of structure. And, what better way to get some structure than joining the military? I joined the Corps of Royal Engineers, and, it gave me, it triple traded me really. First and foremost, a soldier, secondly, a Royal Engineer, and thirdly, it gave me a trade, which many people don't know, but I was a building and structural finisher. We get called the painter and decorators of the army, but much more than that, may I add. So, and I always sort of thought that's the route that if I ever eventually left, that's what I'd go and do.
Did you at this point think the military's my forever? Did you think this was your place at this point?
Yes.
Point? Okay.
There was... I did. I served 6 years, for reasons that, that's another story. Okay. I sort of had to come out due to an unforeseen sort of family illness. It was tough, but it was the right decision for me to make, to sort of be at home and just to be there really. So it sort of set me, that was about 3 years ago.
And that's admirable as well, because, you've gone from not having the structure, chasing something that you really want to do, finding your place, as you've said, and then, you've had to make that decision for other people. And that's really admirable, Chris, to be fair. Perhaps that's come from some of the earlier years, from maybe people not pushing themselves that extra mile for you, and you thought, actually, I want to do this for somebody else. Would that be kind of fair to say? Do you think?
Yes and no. I think there's elements of it that are really fair, but, I've seen... being brought up in that sort of that lifestyle is that you look out for the people that are on your shoulders. Yeah, sure. You look out, and that was instilled to me from a very young age. Seeing my dad have to leave the military, and it was a struggle for him as well. I can look back now and I can go, we both have similar struggles. We just deal with it in very different ways. And. Yeah, it was. I felt a sense of purpose to look after those people that really, really, truly matter to me. A job is a job. Even though it gave me what I was looking for, the places that I can give most are the people that I truly care for, and I felt like it was the right thing to do at that time.
So this takes you you're now 36, is that right at this point?
Yes, you would be right.
With the family as well,
yeah. Good maths.
Yeah. So how old are your kids now?
Now 15 today is my oldest.
Oh wow, today?
Yeah, today. Yeah. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday! Shout out, what's
Aiden?
Happy birthday, Aiden.
Yeah.
No, happy day. So at this point, your kids were looking at being what? Relatively young, then I'm guessing as well. Yeah. So how did you feel taking them through the military lifestyle that you kind of?
So they never moved with me.
Okay, right.
So that was a big thing for me. I wanted them to have structure,
stability.
Yeah. So at this point, they're living in Durham, okay. And it's a massively important thing. I didn't want. For people that don't know, when you live in the military lifestyle as a child, you're known as a pad brat. Yeah. But there is that possibility that they are going to move around loads. I was very fortunate in my 6 years that I was in. I did have to move around for training, which was predominantly the Surrey sort of area, Surrey and Kent. That was for a relatively short period of time for the time that I was actually in. But I was based in Ripon, so it was not too far. It was just down the road, and to sort of be able to sort of have that proximity and that distance, but also give them that structure that was a permanent place to live. And, I just didn't want them moving around. I know how hard it is. I think I know one person from my childhood to now that is a friend outside of like family, and it's
tough for people, isn't it? And I think it's funny actually, when you think of the veteran community, we often think about the soldiers, but what kind of gets forgotten about is the spouses, the wives, the husbands,
absolutely, yeah.
the kids.
Yeah.
You're right. They get, kind of trailed all over the world sometimes, changing schools, not being able to get a proper job because they're constantly, it must be really tough.
Yeah, and I think that was always in the back of my mind. I was making a huge decision, disrupting the family, really. But there was still an element that I needed to feed in myself, and that kind of came with the job and the structure. But whilst also maintaining that structure at home, that there were elements of me that felt selfish, but there were also elements that I needed to just give that little bit of an underline, and whether the family understood that at the time, I don't think they necessarily did, but with time, I hope that it's understood that I wanted that sort of element of home and one school and friends for life, and going through that sort of that thing.
So that brings us to, so you've come out of the army, you're now 36, you're back in County Durham, is that right, in the northeast?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's next for Kristen at this point?
Well,
because that must have felt, again, made you feel just as vulnerable as you did all those years ago, I'm guessing. Because
and at the same time that I was looking at leaving the military, I got what I believed was going to be my dream job, and there were some elements that were from on paper. It looked absolutely incrable, and I make vinyl records.
Oh, okay, brilliant.
Yeah. Which
just had a real resurgence in the last 5-10 years.
Yeah. Year on year, it's sales are increasing every single year, and it felt like the right place to go. It felt like the right thing to do, so I found myself at Press on Vinyl. Shout out to them in Middlesbrough. It felt like the right move. It felt like the next move was that move, and I was going to be potentially dealing with, at the time I thought I'm going to be dealing with small labels, bands, musicians coming in, which I do from time to time, and it's possibly one of the most fulfilling parts of my job. I love finding out about stories. I love finding out. What's really interesting in the world of music is that a lot of people who are starting out as bands, as musicians, and even small record labels, they've got a million other things going on. Whether it be families, whether it be jobs, and that's what I enjoy. I enjoy finding out the nitty gritty.
Real people,
yeah, real people, good eggs.
Good link. No, great. So are you still there now then?
I'm still there,
okay,
still thriving, still, there's been some hard times, but the end of the month, I'll have been there 3 years, one of the longest serving people there, so it's, we've, as I said, there's been some turbulent times. I won't go too much into it, but, at times it's been a struggle. There's been highs, there's been lows, as there has been with any job. Sometimes, I know the managing director very, very well. We go back many a year. I think my sort of military background kind of helped me sort of going in there. I brought an element of structure. I do a lot of the training with a lot of the new people coming through. It's because I'm quite structured, sometimes a little bit too much. Sometimes I have very specific ways. And sometimes when these members of staff don't take on my specific ways straight away, I look from afar and I'm like, I'm biting my nails. I'm like, no. And as time's gone on, there's a lad that's been with us probably for sort of middle of last year. Right. I noticed he was doing a couple of things that I do, in terms of structure, and I pulled him up on it the other day, and he just turned around and he was like, yeah, you were right. It just sort of sets you on that right path and makes your shift as easy as possible. And but when I see these small things, but as well, like I work with some incredible people who work in the world of music as well, who are trying to forge out careers of their own outside of work.
And it's so tough, the music industry now. I got a lot of gigs myself, and there's so many fantastic musicians out there, great indie bands, most nights of the week, in particular in the Northeast. Get yourself to a venue and there'll be some sort of music on. The challenge that, from speaking to some of these people is, a lot of it now is motivated by social media, and it's about followers. It's not about the music 100% anymore, and that's really tough because you're right. They're balancing a job, they're balancing a home life.
Oh.
There's no money in it. It's really tough. And what worries me, and you'll know better than me, but I feel like there's a possibility that we're going to end up with this gap where we just don't have people coming through because they come out, they try and start something and they'll give it a go, but then realize they can't make any money and they go back to the beginning again and it's really scary for the industry, I think.
And I'm very much so in this situation, I'm forever encouraging, come up with a million ideas for all these other people, and sometimes I understand, sometimes I bombard and I'm like, what about trying this and what about trying that? Just get your name out there, just message people, just do this. I work with a great guy called Baxter of Dossers, another shout out, and they're really, really, like, Baxter is working so hard. Home life, work life, and trying to forge a career as a musician, and they're absolutely smashing it. Well, and the work ethic and his motivation that he puts in, and I stand there and sometimes I'm like, what about trying this and what about trying that? Another lad that I work with, Zach, who's trying to he went at Leeds Conservatoire, got a master's. He's looking at being a composer. He's eventually got on to doing a film score for a short film. And sometimes these people come to me, weeks, months later, and sort of say, yeah, thanks. And that, alone is I don't want huge recognition, just as long as I can have a small impact on someone's life and just be that encouragement. Because sometimes I think what people do is sometimes they get overwhelmed. They know the direction that they want to go into, but they also need to make money, and they've got a home life. And, sometimes home life comes with its own challenges.
But do you know what though, Chris? I've just seen you spark in the life there, the passion, right? As soon as you talk about those two examples, Baxter and the guy who's the
Zach, yeah.
Orchestra?
Composer.
Composer, sorry, yeah. I could hear the passion in your voice, and it wasn't because you want recognition, it wasn't because you're going to make any money out of them, blah, blah, blah. It's because you wanted them to succeed. And I love that. That's great.
Yeah, and, there's a sort of a little bit of a term in the military, every man's a link man, and I believe that, if I can help somebody and link them with somebody that I've met along the way, then I want to be that person. I set up a little bit of a thing last year at North East Creative Industry, with the help of the North East BIC. Some crazy man sort of sat down, met me in McDonald's with my son one day, I think back in July. It might have been you actually, Ant. And
guilty.
And told me, set up a networking event, and I was petrified, absolute petrified. And, a couple of months later, I ended up having a networking event. I can't remember how many people came. I think it was 40 to 50 people. The people, just the people that I linked. I know that a couple of them have gone on to work with one another, and that is all I wanted to achieve. I just wanted one link to another link to, and hopefully it just shows more and more people that, just these small little events. I mean, financially or anything like that, I got nothing out of it.
Well, to be honest, so one of the things I was going to ask you, in the theme of the Good Eggs podcast, was what came first? Was it the passion or was it the business? And I think for you, it's pretty obvious it's the passion. Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I almost don't need to answer that. I think you just saying that to me, underlies exactly, where I'm coming from. And it is, it's pure passion. I have passion for other people. I have passion for, communication. I mentioned earlier about my granddad. My granddad could walk into I used to see him at checkouts, remember those things, checkouts. Now we all have self-serve, there's elements of me that I like to go through a checkout every now and again, because it's just nice to have a little bit of a conversation with somebody behind that checkout, just to spark their day. Because I understand, but the mundane of it, but that's what my granddad showed me, and that's, moving forward, I like to I remember these things from being 4, 5, 6 years old, right through my sort of teen years into my adulthood. And it is just that sort of, it's that passion that through business and helping others is, it's communication. And I think just communication is passion.
I love it. But no, thanks for kind of sharing your story. So you've been all over the place. You've had lots of hats, which I think is probably led you to be a really good people person. I know you. We've met a fair few times, and you're really good with people. You understand people, and I think that's a really rare quality that people think they have, but you genuinely have got it, and you've genuinely got a passion to help people. I think one of the things that really stood out for me meeting you was with the Northeast Creatives was that there was nothing in it for you, nothing. And people might go, well, there must have been something in it for him, but there wasn't. And it would have been nice if there was, let's be honest, obviously, but you weren't bothered. It wasn't about that for you. It was about seeing what might come of this, what small acorn might grow into a beautiful tree. And I guess that's kind of what's brought you to where you are today, isn't it? You're still on that journey to wanting to help people.
Absolutely. And I think there was it's quite hard, really. I kind of put Northeast Creative Industry, so I put it to bed, really, just off my own accord. I didn't really announce it. I didn't really...
Yeah, so what happened then? And so you set up the organisation, you had the networking event, which was a success.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, well, I never really sort of set it up officially. I kind of created something. It was there in the cloud, and it was something that I wanted to see where it went as well. It was a little bit of a tester for myself. It was the encouragement from yourself, and it really took me out of my comfort zone. It put me in front of a vast amount of people to speak about something that I was just passionate about, and that's people and the arts and the Northeast, really. And why did I put it to bed? I don't really know. I think I wanted to help more people, not just within the creative industry. It kind of comes from...
Do you think there's a bit of fear in there? Maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome, would you say? Or?
Yeah, I reckon so.
Yeah.
Elements of it.
Yeah.
I'd been for so many years out of the creative industry because I hadn't really sort of kept a check of it. I didn't really do anything creative myself. I suppose some people might say working in in a vinyl pressing plant and making vinyl, I'm sort of dipping my toe in, and elements of it I am. But I think as well I was ready for something else, and that something else is, as you introduced me at the beginning of this, of Muster.
Muster, yes.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Muster, because I'm excited, because I know nothing about Muster yet.
And neither do I.
So Muster was born out of passion, out of your life experience, and thanks for sharing all of that. It's really interesting. You've genuinely had a fascinating twist and turn of a life, really. And I definitely think that puts you in a good position to be able to help other people. So Muster, what is Muster, Chris?
Muster is it's a term for people to come together, and that's kind of what I want it to be. I want people to come together. We live in a society now where there's a lot of help out there, and a lot of that help is for the people that. It's not that they don't necessarily need the help, because I believe absolutely everybody needs the help, but it's about the people who don't know that they need the help yet, or don't know that the help is out there, and it's for the people that are finding themselves in adverse situations, homelessness, addiction, trying to come out of, through recovery, veterans, mental health, people with a criminal past, convictions. And there are loads of organisations out there, and I want to shed a light on these organisations whilst also going into communities and talking to people. I had an idea a couple of months ago. I actually put it on a Stephen Bartlett feed on LinkedIn about having a sort of an ice cream van style thing where you went into communities, you stuck your whatever tune it is that they have on an ice cream van, and in the back of it, you're not selling ice creams. You have someone there that can speak about CVs. You have someone in there that can talk about jobs, and a jobs board, an old school jobs board. We don't have them anymore. It's scrolling, but how many people get interrupted by scrolling and so forth? And
we're all addicts. We all are. It's funny because I was talking to somebody about this, and they were like, I don't use my phone that much. And I'm like, I bet you do. We all do it, right? Most of us go, I really don't. I guarantee you, most people, when they wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? You check your alarm, or you check your clock on your phone. And all of a sudden, you're in email city, you're checking Twitter, you're checking Facebook to see what somebody's had for their tea, and you go down this wormhole. Most of us are guilty of that. It scares me a little bit, I must admit.
100%. And I think where the idea kind of came from is that it takes people out of that situation. It gives people a little bit of human interaction. It gives people a jobs board. And to be honest, it was just a little bit of an idea. And then I seen something on LinkedIn the other day, and the Department of Work and Pensions is actually doing it. And I was just like, I thought of this idea 2 months ago. But they're doing it sort of in the Wolverhampton, sort of the Midlands area. And I think it's absolutely incredible, whether I decide to move forward with this or not. But it's just one of them sort of potential facets that could kind of come into play. But Muster is, it is around highlighting the incredible work that some people are doing out there. One guy, James McAvoy, who through his life story, potentially serving 2 life sentences, came out on parole, got out on his parole, works with Youth Beyond Borders, to take people from urban areas and get them into running. Because he found sport whilst in prison, breaking world records and indoor rowing and stuff like that. This guy should be a household name. And I want, and that's what I want. I want people who don't know about these stories to know about these stories and to take them into communities. And these need to be stories that are because it's going on in all of our communities. What better place to start than the Northeast, where we have this element of, a huge element of community. You go anywhere in the country, and I've moved around a fair bit, and the Northeast is, what you know about the Northeast, everyone's dead friendly, and we're all a little bit crazy as well, so it kind of goes hand in hand, and this is where I want it to go. I want Mustard to just be part of the community to, and to make the community part of the wider community.
Love that. You mentioned earlier that obviously you love your music and you love the creative arts. So the question is, if you were to pick a song that represents Muster, what would the song be?
Oh wow! How much longer have we got? Oh god, that's a real tough one. Off the top of my head,
Tell you what, we'll come back to that, shall we?
Yeah, I know it could be a little while.
It's all right. No, great. It sounds exciting, Chris, and it sounds like you've got a plan, or certainly you've got a goal at least anyway of where you want to get to, and that's really commendable. And I think you're in a great position to make that change and make the difference. So please keep on doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Because it's needed. It is needed, and you are the right person to do it. You mentioned earlier you might have had a little bit of imposter syndrome with the Northeast Creatives, but do you know what? Everybody gets that.
Yeah, I think with my background and and substance abuse and addiction, and I've had a little bit of a run-in, unfortunately, with the law in the past. The bullying that I've sort of had. I'm a veteran. I almost tick all the boxes that I want to help. Do you know what I mean? And I just sort of.
Do you know what though? It makes you relatable and it makes you real, and that's a rare quality. It really is. Most of us, we just become, what's the word in computer games, whether we're background NPC, you become an NPC, don't you, right? Whereas you've been the main person in various roles, and I think that's that can really resonate with other people. So
yeah, and I mean, sometimes you mentioned the imposter syndrome, and sometimes there's an element of me that's almost convinced himself, well, you've never been to prison, so maybe you can't relate to everyone, or you've never been a heroin addict, so you can't relate to everyone. But
let's not try and practice that, right? Shall we?
Absolutely not. But I'm forever, I want to learn from the other people who have been there, and I want to talk to them all. And I said them all. I want to talk to the people that want to talk and want to open up and want to make for a better change, and for their life and for others, and and to help themselves and help the community that they live in, because we're all part of the community.
Love that, Chris. I think that's a great place to end. Is there anything else that you want to say or give a message while we're on camera now about people who might be able to help you in your journey, or who you want to help? Is there anything you want to kind of say?
Reach out. I'm on LinkedIn. Chris Scadden. I don't really use any other form of social media. Otherwise, I'll be doom scrolling all day, looking at the other incredible stories out there. But I have a little side project on LinkedIn called Muster that I often share it. So get in touch, and I'm happy to talk and happy to meet.
Great. Thanks very much. Well, all that's left to do, Chris, is to give you our very own personalised good egg. So thanks very much for being a good egg, Chris.
Smashing. Thank you very much. I'll take this and hold it. I might eat it there.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.